Salutations from space, folks. This is Gemini Brett, the Astrolonaut of morethan-astrology.com, with a look at this month's Pisces moon game. And it is a special one, a total solar eclipse just before the vernal equinox, and a total lunar eclipse. It is very rare to have both in one cycle. Today we are drinking some snow honey chrysanthemum tea from Poe at Heaven's Tea, because the flowers are out. It's about to be spring. And in the moon game, we play by setting intentions to anchor the light of this moon's archetype and to purge its shadow, using the significant phases of the moon to help us in the process. So this is about Pisces intentions. What is Pisces? These fish who in the constellation of the sky are mysteriously tied together. The story goes that to escape the monster Typhus, Aphrodite and Eris, or Venus and Cupid, turned themselves into fish, jumped into the Tigris River, and tied themselves together so they would not lose one another. This is the planet Neptune, and its discovery in 1864 speaks in ways about this archetype of Pisces, because the energy of Neptune is very related to the energy of Pisces. Uranus was the first non-visible planet discovered in 1781 using the telescope, and it was kind of discovered by accident by William Herschel. But in 1864, Neptune was discovered after having been mathematically calculated as to where it should be. For we saw these perturbations in Uranus's orbit that said something else had to be out there. And so this Neptune energy, this Pisces energy, it's an energy that shows that we are all connected. This energy in a way of empathy. I am he is she, and she is we, and something about a walrus they sang. We are all one. This is the Pisces glyph. And check this out. It's kind of these two fish bending away from each other, tied together with that line in the middle. But if you flip the fish, you get this symbol, the Vesica Pisces, the ancient symbol of the feminine, the ancient symbol of the womb, the waters of the womb from which we come. The waters of the earth, in which we all swim, in which we drink, in which we share. These Pisces waters in which we merge. These Pisces waters of healing, of empathy. A shamanic astrology, this paradigm visioned forth by Daniel Gemario, and shamanic astrology, which is the starry stock of my stew. It says that the mutable signs, of which Pisces is the third signs of the seasons, the last signs of the seasons before the dawning of the new season. Pisces is the last sign of winter before spring begins with Aries at this coming vernal equinox. Shamanic astrology calls these mutable signs service to spirit. And so Pisces is service to spirit in the waters, as healer, as empath. It is the nature of merging and of compassion. This image of Kuan Yin, compassion itself. But Kuan Yin cut her own eyes out so that another subject of her father's kingdom would not have to. And while that's a beautiful thing, it also brings us into possible shadows of the Pisces archetype that we are meant to release in our intentions during this month. This merging nature, this mystical nature, Pisces, the last sign on the wheel of life, transcendence, ascension, togetherness, empathy. Some would say the guru nature in its mysticness, but probably more this bodhisattva, she who has reached enlightenment but chooses to stick around to help others find theirs. And so the shadow of compassion can lead us into martyrdom. And what's the use of nailing ourselves to a cross if no souls are saved? The snake charmer, he who can just suck the venom from the snake victim's bite. But what if we don't have the training to do so? Don't we just take on their poison, take on their illness? We have to be careful with this empathic connection that we're all feeling so much more and more at this wild stage of the Earth game. Well, this image of the snake charmer reminds me of this image of Rumi, the poet, the mystical poet. Pisces lives there as well in poetry. Here's an image of Burroughs, a rather avant-garde writer. Pisces can be that avant-garde poet for sure. And it warns us of another potential Pisces shadow, falling into the addictions. Now, most likely, this kind of fish, the tens of thousands of people at a fish show, is more Pisces than this kind, the tens of thousands of people at the Dolphins game. But still, is there a Pisces shadow in this? Or is it Pisces light? A bunch of people coming together, merging their energy, connecting to the mystical, but so often just through the use of inebriants and such. Is this not a starvation to connect without them? And so we have to be careful of the Pisces shadow of addiction, which sometimes is just running away from the true mystical connection. And the shadow of belief. I say police just because I see this image on my screen, but belief is something very fishy in Western religion. There's these fish heads, and there's these fish heads. Rather strange that. So we have to be careful what kind of Kool-Aid we're drinking in our Pisces I believe mug. Well, speaking of I believe, let's get on to the pseudoscience, right? Here is the chart for this Pisces new moon. Moon and sun together there, 29 degrees, 27 minutes Pisces, and this is a total solar eclipse. But before we go there, I'd like to start with the Sabian symbol, as long as we're into the I believe stuff, for this 30th degree of Pisces, this last degree on the wheel of life. And I'll read first the Sabian symbol, which was channeled forth by the psychic Elsie Wheeler around 1930 in San Diego. And the symbol is: a majestic rock formation resembling a face is idealized by a boy who takes it as his ideal of greatness, and as he grows up, begins to look like it. Now, from this book, An Astrological Mandala by the great astrologer Dane Rajur, he speaks to this symbol. His keynote is the power of clearly visualized ideals to mold the life of the visualizer. And he says Nathaniel Hawthorne's story, The Great Stone Face, is used here in an allegorical sense to show the capacity for true transformation latent in human. This power can be developed through visualization, when the emotions or the will are poured into the visualized mental image. At the highest spiritual cosmic level, this is the power used by the godlike beings at the close of a cosmic cycle in projecting the basic formula, the Word, which will start a new universe. In a biological sense, it is the power latent in all seeds, the power to produce and guide the growth of the future plant, a most fitting symbol for the last phase of the cyclic process. Within the end of the cycle, the seed of a new beginning exists in potency. Unless the entire cycle has proven to be a failure, he ends with. the very last sentence of his description of these 360 Sabian symbols. A failure! Oh no! Well, we'll get back into that, but first back into the chart. This total solar eclipse at the very last degree of the zodiac, the 30th degree of Pisces. Now, I did a bunch of research last night to figure out when the last time a total solar eclipse at the last degree of the zodiac happened, and I couldn't find one. I went all the way back to the year 300 AD before I got too tired and gave up. And then I searched the NASA site, and it seems that this has not happened since recorded time, since at least 5,000 years of eclipse records. That's something else, but what does it mean? Spiritually, emotionally, physically. There's something I really like about this total solar eclipse chart. This red circle is around Mars in Aries, a sign perhaps where Mars energy is most comfortable, and Venus having just recently ingressed into Taurus, perhaps the sign in which she is most comfortable. What a beautiful thing for Mars and Venus to be at home in this great year of their 3 exact conjunctions. Something possible every 6.5 years, but something that has not happened since 1996. Many of you have heard me speak about this, and I'm calling it an opportunity for us to rewrite our relationship to relationship. So at this time of the total solar eclipse, moving into vernal equinox, the time of new beginnings, what a gift to have Venus and Mars there in their home signs. And back to the chart, something else we see, Uranus square Pluto, perhaps the most dynamic astrological aspect of our day. And what a day it is, because we had the last of 7 exact square alignments between Uranus and Pluto on March 16th, Tuesday. And this brings us back to the beauty of the moon game. Not only is it a strategy to help us connect to these many archetypes as the sun moves through their signs, but it is a way for us to experience the energies of a cycle, a 29.5-day cycle. And that gives us some perspective, some experience, so that we may better understand and intentionally connect to the longer cycles. So this Uranus square Pluto at this time is the first quarter phase, the sprouting of the seeds that were planted at the new moon when Uranus and Pluto were together, were conjunct in Virgo in the mid-1960s. Then we had flower power, and as those seeds, those flowers sprout now, at this time of Uranus-Pluto square, perhaps a time of tension, the sprouting of the seeds, flower power has gotten a little more extreme. So the last exact of 7 Uranus-Pluto squares was March 16th, 2015. We've come a long way since the first on June 24th, 2012. But this energy has not left the building, has not left our temple. And it did not begin with the first exact alignment either. Now, there are many theories that have suggested when exactly the energy of Uranus revolution, squaring, Pluto evolution, this aspect of tension, this aspect, this reflection, calling the seeds of the 60s to sprout. There are many theories as to when that energy first came in. And some would say it was that when Uranus first ingressed into the sign of Aries in recent times, this was on May 27th, 2010, that the energy began then. Why? Because this is a whole sign square. Uranus then in Aries, and Pluto in Capricorn. Signs that are square to one another. The square, this aspect of tension. And this first quarter square, like the first quarter phase of the moon, the time of the sprouting of the seeds, when they are exposed to the winds and the rain, the tension, but the plant must bend for it to grow strongly. So maybe this began May 27th, 2010. Certainly there was a lot of revolution and evolution energy happening in the world then. And they were on their way to forming a perfect square. You can see on this chart Uranus having just ingressed into Aries at the 0 degrees of Aries, and Pluto 4 degrees, 49 minutes Capricorn retrograde. But here's the deal, that square did not testify. Now this is a traditional technique that another teacher, Gary Caton, who you can find at dreamastrologer.com, has taught me. An old technique, testification, testimony. Alright, Uranus and Pluto were square, but they did not testify because Uranus left the sign before it made perfect square to Pluto. Uranus went retrograde on July 5th, 2010 at 0 degrees and 35 minutes Aries, about 3 degrees from a perfect square to Pluto. And it returned to Pisces on August 14th, 2010. So it never made the perfect square before it left the sign. So perhaps it was the final ingress to Aries, March 11th, 2011, when it returned to Aries to stay for about 7 years, that this energy of the Uranus-Pluto square began. They're less square than they were before, with Pluto at 7 degrees 18 minutes, but this is a whole sign square, Aries to Pluto, and one that will testify, as Uranus made exact square to Pluto on June 24th, 2012, the first of 7, and again the last of 7 was this week, March 16th, 2015, and oh, what a ride it's been. Well, what do we know about March 11th, 2011? Talk about fire in the waters. That was the very date of Fukushima. I think we're going to need some more hot tea. This was very much this statement of just outer dynamic craziness as a reflection of the inner dynamic craziness we've all been answering recently in our unfoldment since this time. And I think it has a lot to do with the way we can work with the magic and energies of this total solar eclipse. So let's return to this chart. Again, the Pisces new moon, the total solar eclipse, 29 degrees, 27 minutes, Pisces, 2:35 a.m. Pacific time, about 13 hours before the sun ingresses into Aries, 0 degrees Aries, to make vernal equinox, the beginning of spring, the beginning of this solar year. And of course, that's the very degree where Uranus was at that date of Fukushima, which began the whole sign square to Pluto that would indeed testify. So back to this chart, there's another outer planet square we should look to, and that's Saturn square Neptune. Saturn in Sagittarius squaring Neptune in Pisces. Another longer outer planet transit, not as long as the Uranus-Pluto transit, but significant indeed. And what does it mean to us? Well, many would say this is a bad thing. Saturn, malefic, square, tension. But I find a lot of beauty in this. I mean, Saturn brings structure. Sagittarius serves the spirit in the fires as the seeker. And this is structure to our spiritual seeking. In the third quarter phase, the phase of wisdom or fruiting, to Neptune and Pisces. So we don't take that I believe Kool-Aid so far into our dreams that we can't manifest them here in the practical world. And so we should talk about this, but not necessarily just yet, because it won't testify. And then we will be looking into Saturn square Neptune in the way it is the third quarter phase of the new moon that they made together in November of 1989 in the sign of Capricorn, not far from where Pluto is now. And look at that Capricorn stellium. But why I say we'll talk about it later and not now is because this square does not testify. Saturn is retrograde, and it ingressed into Sagittarius on December 23rd, 2014, making that whole sign square from Sagittarius to Neptune in Pisces. But Saturn stationed retrograde this week, March 13th. 2015, and will leave the sign. It returns to Scorpio on July 14th, and doesn't come back to Sagittarius until September 17th, 2015. And now that is an aspect, a square that will testify because Saturn will complete exact square to Neptune in Pisces on November 25th, 2015. So let's get back to that then, but for now let's get back to this time, this current time, because there is another outer planet alignment, a very harmonic, beautiful one, a trine between Jupiter in Leo and Uranus in Aries. Now in the Uranus-Pluto square, Uranus has been doing the revolutionary lightning bolt bit from Aries, the sign of the warrior. And so it's a beautiful thing that Jupiter, which does expand everything it touches, but it is also about mysticism, spirituality. And in the sign of Leo, there's self-love in this. There's the roaring flames of the fire, bringing this harmonic energy of the trine connecting to Uranus. 3 exact alignments, September 24th, 2014, March 3rd, and June 22nd, 2015. This energy helping us make sure that if we're going to go to war, let's do this for a righteous cause, a war of spirit, Joan of Arc style. A lot of Pisces in this Pisces new moon chart. Neptune, Mercury, Chiron. Now Neptune and Chiron have been in Pisces for a while. Many will say that Neptune is at home in Pisces. This is like the image of the Pisces planet party to me, the double rainbow over the breaching humpback. Neptune, Poseidon, not necessarily the character in mythology that would lead us to believe it should be related to Neptunian empathy, compassion, and healing. But there is a lot hidden in the myths that we don't quite find. Neptune, astrologically, is like the celestial healer through this merging empathy and the compassionate heart and mind. And Chiron, the underworld healer, the shaman healer. Chiron, who is the son of Saturn and half horse, and well, Neptune created the horse. So it's a beautiful thing to have Neptune, the celestial healer, and Chiron, the underworld healer, in Pisces, the sign of healing at the same time during these dynamic days of the Earth game. It's very much contributing to this energy of these two dolphins speaking. So many of the humans are awakening. Awesome, isn't it? Yes, it is. And we look back to this chart, look at Neptune conjunct Mercury at the time of this total solar eclipse. So Mercury bringing some of his healing energy. We know Mercury was a great healer, typically from the Virgo side traditionally, but the caduceus staff, and Mercury, the mind of astrology, the original astrologer. The total solar eclipse. What does it mean? And I already read the Sabian symbol there. So we'll look at how a total solar eclipse works astronomically. Let's not forget that this is not just charts and papers, it's a living thing around our Earth. I love this image. Kid's got the whole world in his hands. Total solar eclipse. And of course that happens when the moon comes between Earth and Sun. From Earth we see this as a moon-sun conjunction. Now we have moon-sun conjunction every month. That's a new moon. Why is it not always a solar eclipse? Or a total solar eclipse at that? And that's because they've got to be near a node at the time of the new moon for it to be an eclipse. If they are not, they are seeing the moons above or below the sun from Earth's view. So here we have moon and sun, the 30th degree of Pisces, with the south node at the 10th degree of Aries. And that's pretty far away for a total solar eclipse. These are images of Rahu and Ketu, the north node and south node of the moon. And there's this great story that the eclipses happen because Rahu is taking his revenge on Surya, the sun, and Chandra, the moon, who ratted him out at the time of drinking the immortal elixir. So Mohini cut his head off, and he became these two beings, Rahu and Ketu. And every now and then he has the time, the chance to take his revenge. An eclipse, he eats the sun, or he eats the moon, but because he's been decapitated, they come through his other side. So what are these points, astronomically speaking? Well, really, they're imaginary points in space. All right, the moon orbits Earth, not the sun. So their orbits of Earth, from Earth's view, the moon and the sun's orbits, are not on the same path. They're like two bracelets on your wrist, and if they weren't parallel, they would cross in two places, right? Those two crossing places are the nodes, Rahu, the north node, and Ketu, the south node. So they're these imaginary points in space, but they've been known by the ancients for a long, long time. Which, of course, known by the ancients pretty much means. Because these are the places where eclipses occur. If you have a new moon at a node, or a full moon at a node, then moon and sun, or Earth and moon, are aligned in such a way that we get an eclipse. And that's happening now. I mean, typically you're not going to have a total solar eclipse with this distance. I mean, more than 10 degrees between the new moon and the node. But we do this year because the moon is at perigee, its closest point to the Earth. And that gives us a super moon, right? It's a super new moon and close enough to the node to be a total solar eclipse. That image of the total solar eclipse. And the astrologers of old, the planet police, say this is a bad thing. At these times, the king might just die. And maybe this is not the most Piscean, compassionate thing to say, but is the death of the king such a bad thing for the people? I'm not so sure about that. And why would the ancients fear the eclipse so much? One of my teachers, Kaylin Castell, said this recently, and I loved it, because they feared shadow work. But we do not. I mean, this is one of the things that Uranus and Pluto and this square have really brought us into, confronting our shadow. And in the words of Carl Jung, to confront a person with his own shadow is to show him his own light. So the eclipses are about shadow, and they are about light. And I heard Kaylin say this recently as well, and I loved it, that when the sun is eclipsed by the moon, the flowers go back to sleep. And then they open again when the sun is revealed once again. So it's like a time of death and rebirth in a very short window. And you know what? Vernal equinox is about that anyway. So this time is extra charged. Extra charged because following this total solar eclipse, we will have a total lunar eclipse. A blood moon. The third of 4 in a row. Here's an image of the chart for the total lunar eclipse, which comes to us April 4th, 2015, 5:05 a.m. Pacific time, which means this can be seen. It will be seen on the western horizon, and the moon shall be turned to blood. Look how close it is to the north node at that time. And here's an image of why it turns red. Okay, the Earth gets between sun and moon, so the shadow of Earth is projected onto the moon, eclipsing it, giving us a chance to go into the shadow. But the sun refracts the light from sunrise on one side of the Earth and sunset on the other, this red light onto the surface of the moon. So the moon turns blood red, although it's really more orange typically. Here's a strange quote of belief. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and glorious day of the Lord. Well, great and glorious sounds pretty good, but usually that quote is not spoken to say such glorious things. And we have to be careful, of course, when we get into this fishy territory. This is Tom Horn, and if you want to learn more about this blood moon tetrad, I recommend you check out his work on YouTube or elsewhere. But go in with a full heart because he's saying some pretty scary things. But one thing he does very accurately point out is that this is a time of a tetrad, 4 blood moons in a row, and that this is very rare. And we had 2 last year, April and October 2014, and we have 2 this year, this coming total lunar eclipse, this blood moon on April 4th, and another one on September 28th. It's actually September 27th here in Seattle. In between a total solar eclipse. Now this is entirely rare. And what Mr. Horn points out in his research is that wild things have happened with the nation of Israel when there have been these rare blood moon tetrads, 4 lunar eclipses in a row over 2 years with no partial eclipses in between. So the last one, 1967 to 68, the 6-day war, when more land was claimed from Palestine for Israel. And before that, just after Israel was declared a nation after World War II. Before that, the fall of Spain, when Jews were expelled and Columbus discovered America, this infant nation that might have been prophesized. So we shouldn't go too deep into the prophecy. I'll let Mr. Horn and others on the World Wide Web do that for you if you choose to check it out. But it is pretty amazing stuff. And it has my attention certainly on Israel as a nation, where just yesterday, oh, why am I forgetting his name? Benjamin Netanyahu was re-elected as Israeli Prime Minister. All right, I'm recording this, by the way, on Mercury's Day, Wednesday, March. Let's just call it the 18th. It is. And so this was yesterday, Tuesday, March 17th, the Israeli elections. And didn't look like Netanyahu was going to be re-elected for some time, but he was. So what does this mean as far as the blood moon tetrad? Who's to say, but hopefully it doesn't just mean more of this stuff. More of this war of division. This image in Gaza reminds me very much of this image in Fukushima. How do we heal this war, this division, this fire in the water, this radiation, these amazing earth changes that have been coming at this time? How do we reconnect to the waters of our world in blessing? This total solar eclipse, how can we work with that energy? Just before the vernal equinox, the time of rebirth. How can we be reborn from that energy? The time of resurrection, how can we resurrect ourselves from this scary, fear-based stuff that is all around us? Well, these places, this total solar eclipse and then the vernal equinox, they encompass this very important line of the zodiac. The very end of Pisces, the last sign of the wheel of life, and the very beginning of Aries, the first sign of the wheel. So it's this place that is the alpha and omega, the beginning and the ending. So what came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, regardless of the answer, they are certainly interdependent. You can't have one without the other. And let us remember that, and the wheel of life is a reflection of this. The alpha and omega, and this strange cross. Well, this vernal equinox point, it is a point of the cross. And there's a few of these in the sky, okay? One is where the Milky Way crosses the ecliptic, the path of the sun. And that happens at this time in the Earth game, at the solar solstice and the winter solstice points. But another place that never changes of the cross in the sky is where the ecliptic crosses the celestial equator. And that happens at the vernal equinox point in the tropical Western astrology system. This is 0 degrees Aries. And at the autumnal equinox point, 0 degrees Libra. The sun on the cross. And it's also the constellation that the sun will rise in at that time that is said to determine the astrological age of humankind. And this is the rising of the age of Aquarius, the dawning of the new age. And so much about this Mayan calendar and the 2012 thing seems to speak to this, the turning of the ages, galactic alignment. This, by the way, is not the Mayan calendar. This is the Aztec calendar, the Mexica calendar. They seem to come from a common source, perhaps the Olmecs. This is the Mayan calendar. And when I was tripping on this stuff in the 2012 time when Uranus and Pluto were first aligning, I wrote a song that's called The Beginning of the End. And it's like, this is the beginning of the end of the beginning again. Soon the beginning ends and we have to start beginning the end. Revolution is the wheel that spins our soul and systems evolution. This is the beginning of the end of the beginning again. Always again and again and again. Alpha and Omega, the death and the birth, the death and the rebirth, the setting of the sun, the rising of the sun, the darkness of the night, the brightness of the day. So I guess I'm going to have to watch this movie, but when I searched Alpha and Omega, I had to grab it because I saw them here as fire and water, and of course that's a statement of temperance, of alchemy, combining this heart, the water, this feminine energy with this will, the spirit, the fire, this masculine energy. And fire and water don't always play so nicely together. Aries, fire, Pisces, water. How can we combine these energies to find peace? There's an image of Pisces and Aries from Chartres Cathedral in France. One of these beautiful Gothic cathedrals, interestingly enough. And that brings us to this idea of Alpha and Omega. How do we move from this place of water to this place of fire eloquently? Water, maybe it's love, and fire, maybe it's power. So my question for you is, do you want to exercise the love of power or the power of love? And this comes to us, I think, in this image of Aries, this image of warrior, this dawning of this spring. What are we meant to have war for, right? Many of us, myself included, I must say, though I'm trying to leave it behind, have been on that soapbox trying to shake people awake for so long. But is that truly the way of the red megaphoned Aries warrior, to run around shaking others awake? No, the warrior is here to protect. Perhaps to protect the Pisces dreamer. Instead of shaking them awake, perhaps it is the awakening one and that warrior spirit, perhaps it is their role to protect the sleeper's dream so that they can have the vision and wake when rested to bring that vision forth, to help us move forward. So we are all the warrior and we are all the dreamer, the Alpha and the Omega. Is it the power of love or the love of power? Let it be the power of love, sang Huey. And so did Jimmy. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. Well, and I love that Huey Lewis in the news had the Power of Love song featured in Back to the Future. The Alpha and the Omega, the beginning of the end of the beginning again. So these waters of compassion, these empathic Pisces waters of healing, of merging, of mysticism, how do we bring them to this wild world at this time? How do we soothe the fires of radiation with love? How do we fix the toxic fish? How do we bring the waters back to the lands that are starving without rain? How can we bless this water, as so many of us are called to do? And we get some lessons about that from Masaru Emoto's experiments. Masaru, who recently transitioned into the next generation, wherever that may be, the next dimension. But he did these amazing experiments with water, right? Where he showed that if you gave water love, it would produce this beautiful crystal And if you gave it hate, it would produce a very hateful and ugly one. So in a water blessing, it seems the best way we can really heal the water is simply by loving it. If we go to the seas and say, I'm so sorry and we're so bad and all these people are hurting, and we're programming that water to carry that fear energy, that pained energy, that energy of apology, which really is not the true energy of love and gratitude. So how can we connect to our water and say, I love you? I mean, we live in this time where we can turn a knob, most of us, and water comes out of this spout. I mean, what kind of magic is that? And how often do we remember in the shower when we fill the glass to drink just to say thank you? How often do we find ourselves at the sea and just giving our love to the waters of earth? And so maybe that's something we can do to really connect to this beautiful, empathic, merging, compassionate, mystical, dreaming, poetic energy of Pisces as we plant seeds of intention this month and release some of the shadow of martyrdom, of victimhood, of over-apologetic getting down on ourselves, yeah? And this moon game, I think, helps that develop. As we plant the Pisces seeds at this total solar eclipse, and they will sprout in the week that begins with a Cancer first quarter moon on March 27th. And how can Cancer, the nature of the nurturer, service to others in the waters of the heart? Karuna, the unconditional love of mother for child from which all other love springs, how could this energy possibly challenge Pisces? Well, there's one thing that they both share in their shadow, which is the nature of overgiving, yeah? There is such a thing as giving too much after all. When you start giving too much importance to someone in your life, you tend to lose your value in their life. I love this quote. And being giving can be a form of neediness. Perhaps not the greatest grammar there, but you see what it's saying. I mean, sometimes when we just lose ourselves to those we feel we must nurture out of duty, then we are lost. And not only are we taking their suffering from them, but we're taking their opportunity to grow from it. And we're ignoring our own, and therefore ignoring our own opportunities. So let's not overgive. Can we release that in the intentions of this month's game? And what can we give birth to moving forward into this vernal equinox, this time of birth? Through releasing. I mean, there's been such traumatic times, such earth crisis. I always think of this incredible album by Steel Pulse when I hear that term. You know, and this was clearly by the art, you can tell, composed some time ago, but it hasn't seemed to get better. It seems to have gotten worse. But why? Is there a beauty even to that madness? You know, we can follow the reggae rhythm to the great prophet Bob Marley on our Piscean dream here, who in Uprising has this song, Real Situation, right? Check out the real situation. Nation's war against nation. When will it end? And when did it all begin? It seems like the only solution is total destruction. And I think a lot of us have felt that. The Earth's out of control, what can we do? People aren't waking up, it's going to fall apart, yeah? And getting on that Aries soapbox of the unrighteous warrior trying to wake others awake. But is that really the solution? I would say Marley was more accurate when he talked to us about one love. And perhaps that's what the Libra full moon will bring to us, this total lunar eclipse, this blood moon, I mean, entering the shadow of Libra, the scales of balance, and of course we're in shadow there when we aren't balanced in every way. Yin and yang, giving and receiving, yeah? But a beautiful aspect of Libra that will bring to our Pisces intention at this time of flowering is that of harmony, of peace. And perhaps if the Cancer tensions allow us to release some of the greed of need shown in overgiving, we can find that balance, we can allow ourselves to receive. How could we possibly protect others if we have not allowed for ourselves beautiful nutrition, allowed ourselves to receive? So finding that balance, finding that peace. And I think of Marley in the One Love Peace concert when he brought warring politicians onto stage and raised their hands in the air. What's at war at us that can shake hands? What's still smirking even when their hands touch? Can we bring love to that and release the pain to be reborn into this new way at this very important time? This is an amazing book by Jose Luis Stevens of the Power Path called Praying with Power. And I'll speak to you a Libra prayer from this book that I often speak when I feel troubled by the suffering of the world and my own. You know, I remind myself that I'm sitting in a house, a roof over my head, and I can eat. And I remember that when the world is such a mess, somehow still, if I breathe, I am at peace. And the prayer is this: I am experiencing peace. I am at peace. I am peace. What if we bless the waters with that prayer? Wouldn't that make those crystals so much more beautiful than I am at fear? And so the last quarter of this Pisces month will come from the sign of Capricorn, the sea goat. No, and many of you have seen my work about what the hell is a sea goat, where I have mythologically traced the roots to reveal that this is very possibly a purposeful mispronunciation by patriarchy to take the true feminine gift and strength from wise elder counsel of grandmothers. Feminine, wisdom, Capricorn, the she-goat, Amalthea, whose milk fed baby Jupiter. Perhaps Gaia herself, not Big Brother is watching you, this police state shadow Capricorn mess, but Big Mother is loving you, always. May we connect to that in our Pisces dream. Not this division, this us and them, but togetherness, connecting through our empathic hearts, the waters of the world. Not this Isis, but this Isis, the true Isis, the divine mother, who is pregnant and ready to give birth. And I know we're stressed out about her and angry at others and angry at ourselves for our contributions to her seeming destruction. But is that all that's happening? I'm going to read to you from Dane Rajar's An Astrological Mandala. For this, I got to get back here and look at what degree it is. For this 22nd degree of Capricorn, where we will have the third quarter moon, the fruiting week of this month. And it reads this way. The symbol is, by accepting defeat gracefully, a general reveals nobility of character. Rajar's keynote is the realization that one may grow through defeat as well as, and perhaps more than, through success. And we felt this in our lives, have we not? I mean, sometimes our greatest challenges, the things that were done to us, when we realized they were actually done for us, we can unwrap the gift that was hidden in them. We learn to forgive and then we grow. And can we do this for ourselves? If we've trespassed on another, if we've harmed another, if we've hurt another, can we learn to forgive ourselves by honoring the truth that in that pain we also gave them a gift. If they choose to unwrap it, we can't make them unwrap it. But we don't give them the opportunity to if we can't forgive ourselves and love ourselves. And if we get to this point of our contemplation, what about Earth herself? You know, I've heard many people say, I surrender and surrender and surrender, and never can I find a way, a solution that will make this world safe for our children, a better place now. And recently, I began wondering, are we not living in the solution? I mean, doesn't Earth deserve, as a very conscious being herself, to go through her own turmoil, her own evolution into the shadow, so she can find the light on the other side and resurrect herself from it? And perhaps we, as cells of her body, are just here helping her go through her own process. Does that mean we should drive 18-ton SUVs around and do all these terrible things? Absolutely not. We are meant to reduce our fingerprint, our footprint, and such. But really, we're not going to do this by hating ourselves, but by loving ourselves. And when I say do this, to help the Earth usher herself through her shadow. And that, I believe, is the true gift of Pisces in its highest light. And may we find that this month. May we use these eclipses, this total solar eclipse followed by a total lunar eclipse, incredibly rare. This total solar eclipse at the last degree of the zodiac, it might never have happened before. I haven't found a time yet. I mean, it's so incredibly charged this month. Can we use these eclipses to release our shadows, to set intentions that will bring more love to our souls? Can we confront ourselves with our shadow to find our light? Can we let our inner king die? Yeah? The Uranus-Pluto square bringing all this tension, this revolution, this evolution, it's been hard. Can we put our hands on our hearts, look in within, and honor ourselves for the dynamic changes we've made in our lives over these past few years, and do this with love? And can we release more? I mean, the death of the king, this is the card, right? The tower card. And what's shooting off the false tower is the crown when the lightning bolt strikes. So what crown within can we release? For as above, so below, as within, so without. What is your inner Fukushima? What is mine? How has my power become toxic? How is my addiction to old energy forms keeping me from finding the beautiful new energy that will set me free? What kings on false thrones within do I have yelling at me, criticizing me, keeping me from believing at myself? What demons of guilt have I not purged by finding the gift of apology? We contemplate that during this total lunar eclipse as the heart of the moon covers the fire of the sun, and take those intentions to the blood moon eclipse on April 4th and let them go. Right? We can say this work can take so long, but I like to say that when we know the work is play, then work actually gets done. And while the ancients might say you should never watch an eclipse, I say that's because they're afraid of their shadow, and we are not. So let's use this magic of this eclipse, which will come to us April 4th, Saturday, at 5:05 a.m., so very early in the morning. For most of you, that's probably Friday night. The eclipse will start probably around 3:30 a.m., and during the time of the eclipse, which is exact at 5:05, the blood moon, you see every phase of the moon. All right? So this is like a month's work, a month's worth of spiritual play, of shadow work that we can do in like 3 hours time. But we won't see this one complete here on the West Coast. And if you're going to look at it, if you're going to watch it, do so with intention. And you're going to want to look west. It's going to be on the western horizon. So I'll be down at the beach with a bonfire and seeing the fire of the moon reflect back to me as I burn and let go that which no longer serves me. And before the eclipse process is finished, at least here in Seattle, the sun will rise. A new sun will rise. And that's what vernal equinox is about. The rising of the sun. when days begin growing longer than nights. The resurrection, the birth. You know, Pisces, the last on the wheel of life, it is this merging. It is this we are all one. But then, as we shift from Pisces to Aries, over that Alpha Omega point, we were born from that waters of the wombs of all that is into self, into us, into this personal experience we're here to have in the Earth game. The Alpha and the Omega, again and again. The wheel of karma, it is said. Maybe that's such an important point. And can we release old karma intentionally so that we can move forward into this new year in a brighter way? Lessons in life will be repeated until they are learned. Or as the law of one material teaches, in forgiveness lies the stoppage of the wheel of karma. Now this, I believe, is the greatest gift of that compassion, that Pisces love. Forgiveness. The gift of forgiveness, the power of forgiveness, the freedom in forgiveness. Can we forgive others? Can we forgive self? Forgiveness is the final form of love. One love. So let us honor Earth, not only by feeling her pain, but letting her feel our beauty in this most magical month. Amalthea. Capricorn is the time of the birth of the sun. But this, vernal equinox, Aries, this is the time of the resurrection. So let us be reborn like those flowers that close. Let us open again and use these solar eclipses and the intents of this Pisces moon game to live a better way in one love. Thank you for watching. Love to you, and snow honey chrysanthemum tea. This is your friendly Astrolonaut, Gemini Brett of morethan.astrology.com, signing out. I will see you in space. Mind if I drink this for you?